Hey guys, Alan here. Welcome back to the workshop. In this video I want to make an NT40 tool setter. And what's that, you might ask? Well, here's the finished product so you can see what I'm going to do. And you mount this in a vise, slip your NT40 thing in there and you can undo the locking thing. That's the job. I thought it'd take me about a day. Ha! It took a lot longer than that. Anyway, here's hoping you find something interesting in it when I share the journey with you. So I got off to a good start by realising I was going to have to tram the mill before I could even start on what I wanted to do. So I have a bit of a check here. So I've set this dial gauge to 0. We sweep round. Yep, it's quite a long way out actually. So I have to adjust that. Okay, so I need to loosen off these 4 bolts and then I'll be able to move the head to get the tram right. Oh, so slacken that off. Now there's a built-in adjuster, so I've got to rotate this bolt that you can't see to tilt the head. So we'll tilt it. Alright, we'll leave that like that. So we'll set that on. We'll set that on 0 now and swing around this way. And that's pretty damn close, so we'll start tightening things up. And check it again. We'll set that on 0. And it's moved off. It's moved off a hair. Well, I'm struggling to get it much closer than that, I think. Let's swing back round again. So that's just under 0 there. I want to reset it on 0. Right, we'll swing this around. I think I'm going to take that. That's as good as I'm going to get. So we'll tighten everything up properly. Let's go around all once more. Alright, final check. There's a bit of parallax going on there. That's 0. And that's pretty damn close to 0, so we're going to call that done. Oh, it didn't take long. So that's checked the tilt left and right. Now I want to check the nod, which is the head moving away from me or towards me. So all set up to check now, so we'll sweep round 180 degrees. And I think maybe you'll be able to see that that's spot on. So I was out in the tilt, but the nod was spot on. So now I've checked and confirmed that the tram is correct. I want to use a fly cutter, and that will give me a real sense that everything's hunky-dory, or not. So I want to use fly cutter to face off the piece of work that I actually want to work on, but I've discovered there's a chip on the carbide insert in the bit, so I've got to do something about that. And I want to use my tool and cutter grinder to hold it. I don't feel like trying to hold it by hand, the angles I want. So I've knocked this up. It's a bit of 20 square bar stock with a 1/2 inch channel cut through it, so that will clamp this into place. And to hold it in the dividing head on the tool and cutter grinder, I'm going to use this guy. This was something I made ages ago to hold a dial gauge in a tool post. So I drilled a couple of holes in it, countersunk them, and a couple of matching holes in this block and tapped them. So this lot will all go together. As you can see, you can hear a racket in the background. I've got the house builders back next door. They're putting the roof on a new house. I've just got to put up with it because they'll be doing it for, well, they won't be doing the roof for months, but they'll be making construction noise for months. Anyway, so that's good to go. So let's go and put it in the dividing head and see how that's going to work out. If this idea works out alright, I mean it's quick and dirty just to get me over the hump and allow me to get back to doing what I want to do, I might make a more rigorous, or I don't know, a more sophisticated version of this. We'll see. Anyway, over to the tool and cutter grinder. Alright, I think it's pretty obvious what's supposed to happen here. I've got the spigot on the holder, should fit in the ER collet. So we can tighten that up, and now I can set the angle whatever I like, and let's get started with the sharpening. Okay, on to the next hurdle. I haven't used this wheel before, but it's quite thin and it's going to need a spacer between the securing nut and its face, so I'll have to go and make one of those. So I'm going to need a spacer that's about 3mm thick with a 32mm hole bored in it. Now I've found a washer that's a racing start on that, and I want to mount that in the lathe, and that's my next problem, how to get hold of the washer. So I've put the hole through my big chuck is so large the washer would fall through to the back of the chuck. So I mounted a 5-inch chuck in the big chuck, and that allows me to, and it sort of acts like a spider, allows the washer to sit up against the face of the chuck and it can't go anywhere. So yeah, so that all seemed to work out alright, as you can see. And now we're taking the final cut to bring it to the required size of 32mm. And now we've hit the size, so you can take the washer out. So everything about this job has caused me extra work. So mounting this 5-inch chuck in the big chuck allowed me to grab hold of the washer, so it couldn't fall back through the hole. That's good. But then the key for that chuck wouldn't work while it was involved in that. So I assumed that the drive here would be 3/8, but it's not. It's a bit smaller. So I had to mill a little bit off a spare extension so I could undo the chuck while it was attached to the... It just goes on. Just goes on and on, it seems. Okay, so I've got my washer. I'll put him on there. Tighten that up and we'll be good to go. Right. What's the next hurdle, I wonder? Okay, so now I've got this mounted in the collet chuck. I need to make sure it's correctly aligned with the movement of the table. So I'm just using a dial gauge to do that, as you can see here. Pretty easy to set that up, and then repeat that for the other axes. So I've got to set up the grinding wheel in the same way to make sure that that's in line with the axis of movement. And I think the face of that grinding wheel isn't quite flat. It might have a very slight dish in it, or bulge maybe in the middle. Anyway, I think that's going to be good enough for what I'm trying to do. So now I've got to check the grinding wheel in the other direction as well. Or actually, it's the other direction which becomes important, because that's what I want to use to set the relief in grinding this edge here. That's what this is really aimed at. So let's check that angle out. So I realised I was going to have to change the setup because I wasn't going to be able to get the cutting edge under the wheel properly. Didn't have enough travel backwards, so flipped it all around. The same deal though. Got to set it with a dial gauge so that we've got it in a line in that direction. That is reading. And also check the alignment this way. Read across this way. It's pretty close. I'm not sure what that translates to in actual degrees of rotation, but it's close enough. I'm not going to worry about it. So that's got it aligned that way. I'd already aligned the wheel this way, that hasn't changed, but I've tipped the wheel down, so it's 5 degrees tilt down now instead of 5 degrees tilt up, and I think we're about ready to go. I'll get the dial gauges out the way, but perhaps you can see now that the wheel's going to be able to do that back clearance or the clearance on the cutter edge there. Alright, let's have a look and see where that touched. I've got stops set here so I can't go too far or whatever. But we'll just let this stop go so I can pull it back out of the way. Find the right spanner. So we'll let this stop go. So I can come back this way and have a proper look and see where it was touching. And that's actually pretty good. Yeah, I think that'll be alright actually. So I'll let you see how that's progressing. See, it's mostly sharpened a little bit from the front edge, but I'm not worried about that. The angle I do care about looks pretty close, so we'll press on. I think that's going to do it as far as the tool and cutter grinder is concerned. It's over to the little handheld diamond slipper, whatever you call the bloody things, little diamond stones. Okay, so I'm back on to trying to prepare my piece of material for this job. This is actually part of a tow bar. See, that was the tow bar tongue on the front of it. Anyway, because of that, it had a hole where I didn't really want it, so you can't see it very well from this angle. But anyway, so I machined a plug and pressed it in, so that's filled the hole. But now I want to just dress the surface off a little bit and tidy it up. So that's what led me to wanting to do the fly cutting, which led to the sharpening, which led to the blah blah blah. Anyway, so let's see how this sharpened fly cutter works. So that's 600 RPM, and I think that's probably about as fast as I want to go because it's a fairly hefty head. And it seems to be cutting pretty nicely. Alright, let's have a look at that. So that was 0.1mm depth of cut. I'll give you a closer look. A wicked burr on that edge to be cleaned off. So since 0.1 depth of cut cleaned the other side up, we'll hit this side with the same. So I'm just going to wear that loss of thickness. That was from where the original material was bent for the tow bar, but I'm not worried about that for what I'm doing. So I'm going to call that cleaned up enough to go forwards. And I'm very pleased with the way that sharpened tool worked as well. Okay, so I need to have the 4-jaw chuck for the next stage of the business. And when I change the chucks, I use this platform. I'm not sure exactly what to call it, but anyway, it's to set at the right height, and it's got a couple of chocks to catch the chuck. So and then I can slide the whole lot backs and forwards, and it just makes it, because it's a pretty heavy chuck, and it's not impossible to lift it by any means, but she's got some weight. To remove these D8 chucks, D6 I beg your pardon, you've got these bolts on the back here that you have to, or clips, clamps, I'm not sure exactly what you call them, but they're a fraction of a turn, and they are cam locks, I guess is what you call them. And when you undo those, they let go of the pins on the back of the chuck, so you'll see that when the chuck comes off. So last one, and then the chuck's loose. Right. And it's been a little while since this chuck's been off. That's got it. And you see now the value of the little wooden table. You can just slide the whole lot back. And you see those pins now. They engage in the holes in the spindle face. So let's lift this out of the way and get the 4-jaw in play. Now brace yourself for a lift. Oh, it's heavier than I remembered. Oh. Now get the 4-jaw up. Oh. Yeah, see, it makes it somewhat easier having these chocks to drop it on, so it can't go anywhere. Now you can just slide it back to engage it and rotate it slightly to line the pins up with the holes. Right, and there we go. Alright, so it's got to do those cam locks up now. So you just work your way around the chuck, tightening the cam locks in opposite pairs. Snug them first, and then go around and do it a bit harder, and then do a final check to make sure they're all tight, and you're done. Okay, now I've put a centre pop in the marked out centre of this piece, so I'll use that to position this in the 4-jaw. So we'll start with this guy in the chuck, in the drill chuck. It's actually pretty damn good, just like that. Down a bit there, and down a bit there. Okay, so I've mounted the dial gauge to register on the point that's engaged with the dimple in the piece of work. And well, I don't know whether you'll be able to see this or not, but we'll rotate it around. So it's about 5 thou run out, isn't it? Which isn't bad, and probably be quite good enough, but just for the hell of it, I'm going to try and do a bit better. That's the end result anyway. Hopefully you can see that that's within 1/1000th, which is more than good enough for what I'm trying to do. Okay, let's get in with making a hole in this. Now, in case you've forgotten or I didn't explain it, that's what's got to go through there. So that's an NT40 taper, and whilst the plate isn't very thick, I still like to put that sort of a taper in the hole, so that when this thing drops in, it's got a bit of a snug feel into that plate. So that's what we're trying to achieve. Now this is new ground for me, and that taper is 3.5 inches per 12 inches, or it's commonly termed apparently a 724 taper. So I've got got to put a hole through to start with, but then I've got to set myself up so I can do a taper at that degree, i.e. 3.5 inches per 12. But first up, let's get a hole that's about the right size to work from. Okay, so now I'm getting set up to bore the hole with the taper, and because it's a very short taper, I don't have to be that precise, so I've gone for a quick and dirty way of doing it. I've just mounted an NT40 tool holder in the tailstock, and I can use it to sweep the sweep along that taper and see that I've got the compound tracking pretty close. And I think that's going to be good enough for what I'm trying to achieve. Now it's quick and easy and foolproof in the sense I don't have to worry about halving angles or using measurements. So that's what we're going to do. So we have the taper at full depth at least now, so I think I might, and it might be big enough to start the end of the tool holder, so let's have a go and see what it looks like. That feels pretty snug in there, so I think that'll do us just fine. Okay, so let's have a proper look at this. That's a pretty good fit. It's not meant to be a locking taper, not like a Morse taper, which is a true locking taper, but that's a pretty good fit nonetheless, as you can see. And you can see that it's about 3mm, 2mm clearance there, which is perfectly fine. And perhaps you can see here that the male taper is pretty much fully engaged in the female taper that we've just cut. So that's good. So what's left to do? Not much. Well, a little bit to do. So I've got to cut a couple of slots across here and make up some keys which will engage in these cutouts. Be dogs to engage in those cutouts. So that's the next thing to do. So I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but the dogs are supposed to be 15.9 thick or wide, whatever. Basically 15.9 square in cross section, but the length doesn't seem to be very important. Okay, so I found a bit of scrap. These dogs are going to be about 15 long, so they're basically going to be pretty much cubes. Anyway, I've got more than 30 there, so I'll be able to cut that off and get my two dogs out of that. So over to the horizontal bandsaw. Because I'm shooting for as much accuracy as I can get in sizing these dogs to 15.9 by 15.9, I'm going to check my setup fairly carefully. So I've already got the dimension across this way. That was my practice piece, so hopefully it'll go as well this time. Anyway, so I've got to rough it down first with that cutter and then switch over to something which will do a bit more precise job. I've got to take 2.7mm off, so I think I'll take a millimetre off this side, or yeah, a millimetre off this side, and then flip it over and do the other side, do the rest on the other side. So now we're taking a millimetre off the other side, just roughing it down to fairly close to the end. Okay, so I've measured the piece up and put it in the vise, good to go again, and using that other cutter, this end finished up with, this is how much has to come off, 0.51 to come off. At this end it's 0.62 to come off, so there's a variation in thickness from one end to the other of 0.11. But as it's set in the vise now, you'll see that's the 0.11, so if this cutter does what I hope it will, we should get that sorted. We'll see. So I took several more passes and this left 0.016 to come off one end and 0.018 to come off the other end. So I've set it in the vise with the dial gauge carefully so that this end is a hair higher than the other end, and hopefully you'll be able to see that. It's not much to see maybe, but I'm hoping it's just enough that when I run the cutter over it, it'll bring us, well, certainly won't be any worse than it was, and hopefully perhaps even slightly closer. But we're playing with tolerances here that are way beyond what you should normally shoot for with a milling machine. I think so anyway. Now, because I only want to take off 0.01 and a hair, or a blonde one, as AVE says, I've got to make sure I've got the starting height set correctly. I'll put the Sharpie on this end. Okay, that's just starting to touch now. So the DRO is showing 0.01, sometimes flicking to 0.02. So I guess it's a little bit undecided about whether it's 0.01 or 0.02, but it's spending more time on 0.01. So let's go with that and hope for the best. I mean, obviously we're taking next to nothing off here. Okay, well, let's see how we did, remembering what we're shooting for is 15.9. Wow. Gotta be happy with that. Let's check the other end. Well, I think we'd call that a bit of luck involved there, but I'll take it. That's an outstanding result for a milling operation. Okay, you've got to win sometimes. Okay, time to move on to the next part of the operation. So, got my key stock for the dogs. Cut the two pieces off that. I might just cut it in half. And I've got to cut the slots for the dogs. I'm going to go put them this way, so that I've got room to put a recess or rebate across underneath here, both sides, and that'll give this something to sit on in the vice jaws, because that's how I intend to use it. So 15.9 slot across there is what we need next. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a 14mm end mill and go in at 4mm deep and see how that works out. 1200 RPM. I'm not sure what the right speed to use for this guy. Anyway, I'll give that a try. Okay, well that's got them to depth, so now we've got to get them to width. Okay, well I've taken my final cuts, had a bit of a clean up. I haven't deburred it properly yet, but I think you can see that I've got the fit we wanted. So that's bloody perfect, that is. They'll put up snugly in there. So next thing is to cut this in half and drill and tap to hold the halves into the block. So I use the short cutting attachment for the bandsaw again to cut the block in half. Honestly, you'd think someone who could mill a block of steel to within a thousandth of a millimetre could cut the damn thing in half without stuffing it up, wouldn't you? Misread the rule. Fortunately, there's enough material there that it isn't going to make that much difference. It's just darned annoying, that's all. I imagine we've all been there. Yeah, that's good enough. 2 dogs. A bit shorter than I wanted them to be, but still up to the job. Okay, I've positioned the dogs in the block where they're supposed to be. You need 46 millimetres between the faces, according to the rule book. And the bolts that hold the dogs on are on a 66.7 pitch circle. So I've positioned the chuck over the centre, or yeah, the spindle over the centre at the moment. So we've got to be 33.35 out. So let's do that, 33.35. Which is there. I'll just check that, since my recent efforts with measuring was so pathetic. Anyway, okay. And I'm on the centre line that way as well. I've already checked that. So good to go. Then 15.9. So now drill out, and I'm going to put something to do a counter bore for the head of the socket head screw that I want to use. The heads of these bolts want an 8mm deep recess, and I'm going to use a 1/2 inch, which gives me 12.7. Should be able to run the tap through there now. Out you come on. Time for a big clean up and then assembly. Okay, so now I'm going to cut the shoulders for it to sit on when it goes in the vise. Okay, so I guess that's finished making it. I think you saw in part of the process that these dogs turned out to be a very snug fit in the plate, which is what I was shooting for. I actually found a couple of screws with smaller heads, which is good because my lathe is still set up with a 4-jaw at the moment. Anyway, and I put the shoulders or recesses, rebates, whatever you want to call them, under there, so it can sit in the vise. So I guess what's left to do is put it in the vise and see if it works. Well, as you can see, the tool holder fits nicely into the jig, and it's actually held really quite firmly. I was surprised actually. Even though the tape is quite short, it wedges very nicely onto the NT40 taper. And as you can see, it's just rock solid in there. I did think originally that it might have been necessary to do a holding bolt, a draw bolt in from the back, and I could still do that with a U-shaped bracket, but really it just doesn't seem as if it's going to be needed. So I'm calling it done at this point. So, a very satisfactory outcome. Well, I recorded the intro to this video a few minutes ago, but the whole project took about a week, more elapsed time working on and off through numerous days. It just seemed that everything I wanted to do, I had to do something else first, and before I could do that I had to do something else, and it was just amazing. Anyway, I got there in the end, and hopefully you found something interesting in the video, and even if you didn't. Thanks for watching. But if you did like it, perhaps you'd hit the like button, maybe subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you get told of upcoming videos. So again, thanks for watching, and bye for now.